Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar on owning your feelings and moving through emotional discomfort. My name is Emily Scahill, and to give you some background on me, I'm the manager of peer advocacy supports and services at Mental Health America's national office. A lot of my work focuses on expanding the inclusion of people with lived experience in mental health care, as well as combating widespread loneliness in our society and promoting the value of social connections for whole health. I live with anxiety and depression and have since a very young age, so I'm really passionate about increasing access to care, reducing stigma, and promoting children's mental health through social and emotional learning and early intervention. I'm so excited to be joined today by Christina Baker, who began her recovery specialist career 8 years ago working in a forensic hospital. After earning her state certification, Christina found her way to MHA of Palm Beach County in Florida and shortly earned her National Certified Peer Specialist certification. Christina took on the role of Recovery and Resilience Director and currently manages MHA PBC's community support centers and supervises the recovery support team. She's also a trainer for the HOH, Helping Others Heal, and WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan training. Christina is also a Navy veteran. She served 8 years and traveled to Sicily, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. All right, let's get started. So as you're all well aware, we're dealing with a pandemic right now, and that has brought a tremendous amount of change and uncertainty to our lives, but also some monotony. So it's a weird mix to hold on to both of those realities in our heads and in our lives. It is completely normal to be feeling a bit all over the place, to be feeling hot and cold, well-adjusted one day and out of sorts the next day or the next hour, and totally normal to experience heightened emotions. So typical feelings may be really elevated right now. So say you wake up in the morning and you want a bagel, right? And you get up, you go to the kitchen, and you realize you ate the last one yesterday. Normally, a few months ago, you might react to that as like, oh, okay, well, I'll just have toast. And it's a lot of people now are experiencing that sense of, disappointment way heightened. And all of a sudden it's, oh, I can't even do breakfast right. I already started my day off wrong. The whole day is gone. Everything's going to be messed up today. You're not being ridiculous. Your baseline is just skewed right now. And that's okay. That's totally valid. It's totally normal considering what else we're dealing with. So we're all experiencing a lot of different feelings. I listed some on this slide: anxiety, stress, depression, loneliness, boredom, overwhelmed by the situation and our feelings, because a lot of us are feeling all of these things. The list goes on, and it's okay to feel these things at the same time. So one really weird one is stress and boredom, and feeling both of those simultaneously. I know at points throughout the past few weeks, I've definitely been stressed about how much I have to do, but also bored and feeling like I have nothing to do. And it's a very strange sensation to be feeling both of those. And it's somewhat paralyzing because you're like, well, what do I do? Do I do the things? Do I take time to rest? How do I handle that, right? So for the most part, we all understand these feelings, these ones listed on the slide in front of you. They make sense. They seem normal given the circumstances that we're in. But then there are some other things that you may feel and not quite understand why. So unproductivity is a big one. I have all this extra time, so why am I not using it to get stuff done? There seem to be kind of two mindsets that have emerged around the concept of unproductivity right now. So there are some people who feel like you should be tackling the things you always wished you had time to do, versus people who are like, you know what, do what's best. Do what feels best for you. Cope however you can. I am in the do what feels best category. I think most people plugged into mental health are. But thinking about what you should do or how you should cope will only bring in guilt and shame, right? So the way I see it is, when you have a bunch of tabs or windows open on your computer and it starts running kind of slow, that's what our brains have open right now. We have a million thoughts flying around there at all times. So it makes sense that we can't necessarily zero in on one thought or one task as well as usual right now. Confusion is another one. And the same metaphor about the tabs applies here. So a big part of this, too, is that not a lot of people are sleeping well. And not getting a good night's sleep will really mess with your focus, with your memory, with your understanding, so much more. And even if you aren't doing a lot, you can still be exhausted. You can still have that kind of fogginess happening. And I think, too, a lot of it is momentum. We think, oh, I'm sitting around all day. Like, I shouldn't be tired. And yeah, to some degree that makes sense, but it's also so much easier to do things when you're already up and going. I feel like going to the grocery store on the way home from work is a lot easier than getting up, getting dressed just to go to the grocery store. Another one is anger, so snapping at people that haven't really done anything wrong. When you're overwhelmed, it's so easy to take it out on others or take in those heightened emotions that I mentioned earlier. Something that would have been slightly annoying a few months ago now causes full-on anger. Again, totally normal given the circumstances that we're facing. Grief. You may not identify your sadness as grief right now, but it is what a lot of us are feeling. There are some great articles about how the feelings many are having right now line up with the grieving process. And when you think about it, we've lost what we knew as the everyday normal. Even if you haven't lost your job, lost a family member, you're not dealing with someone else who's sick, there's definitely a grief of losing your commute, losing seeing your coworkers every day, losing your, morning gym routine. That is grief. And then guilt around not coping well, around others having it worse. So thinking that I shouldn't be anxious because I have a secure job or I'm not a frontline worker, so I'm safe. Those may be true, and you may be grateful that those are true, but you're still allowed to be worried or sad or anxious. Just because someone else, quote unquote, has it worse doesn't mean that you can't feel the way that you do. So how is COVID causing these weird feelings? This is a threatening event. There are very real fears here, like job loss, instability, financial stress, illness, mental health, worrying about your loved ones. We're living in the middle of a trauma. So trauma is not just experiencing violence or a car crash. I put the definition up here. Trauma, a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, emotional shock following a stressful event or physical injury. So this is a trauma, and you need to give yourself the grace to cope with how you feel and the credit for pushing forward however you have been. Just getting through each day right now is a win. That's an accomplishment. So there are four main psychological responses to a threat. We have flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. So fight, it's tough to fight against a virus physically, but think defensive actions, and they're often misplaced here. So I think it's cooled off a little bit, but if you remember in the beginning when we first all started going into quarantine, the toilet paper hoarding, that was pretty misplaced, right? There's no real reason to be hoarding a bunch of toilet paper in your house. But that was a fight reaction to the fear and uncertainty that we were facing. Flight is exactly what it sounds like, running away. So in this context, pretending like it's not happening or that it's not real. Freeze is, I think, where a lot of people are. It's definitely where I go to when feeling threatened. Feeling a bit paralyzed, not really sure what to do next, not really totally engaging with it. Like, you'll accept that it's happening. But again, kind of that frozen, that bit of paralysis in dealing with it. And then fawn, which is leaning into the threat, making friends with it. It's not as applicable in the context of COVID, but wanted to put it up there anyway. And this kind of trauma affects our emotional regulation. So you may be feeling too much or too little, but all feelings are valid simply because you feel them. Feelings are not facts, but they are very real. It's important to validate yourself without reassuring those worries that may not be completely accurate or factual. So it's okay to feel a certain way. It's okay to be anxious about, what if I go to the grocery store and get sick? But that doesn't mean it's an accurate thought, right? Going to the grocery store doesn't automatically mean that you will get sick. So I mentioned guilt earlier. If you're feeling guilty, this is a really big thing to keep in mind. Don't compare your situation to others. Don't think you should be less, fill in the blank because others have it worse, or more whatever because others have it worse. I'm going to say it again. All feelings are valid simply because you feel them.
Thank you, Emily. Going into control in relation with a lot of that, control, I think a lot of us may feel right now, I know I do, um, I feel at a loss of control. Not that I'm ever really in truly control. I don't know that any of us are. I don't think we are. But there are certain things that we can control in our environment, in our day-to-days. But lack of control, I think, can just add so much to these feelings of guilt and angst and the bagel comment you made, Emily. I woke up yesterday and there really were no bagels, and I was really frustrated. And then on top of it, when I got home, I really wanted a cheeseburger that my kids had all ate too. And it was an reaction out of me that wasn't a typical reaction of something like that happening. We may have looked at before as just going to the grocery store as something that we didn't put a lot of thought into. And I'm with you, Emily, on that kind of, it's happening, I'm in that freeze, but something as little as a bagel and cheeseburger can set me off last night. I think I threw the orange juice container. But if we can go into the next one and talk about, allowing ourselves to feel these feelings. So much in society, we are told just to keep moving. And in a sense, I understand where that's coming from, and it is valid. It does make sense. We need to keep going. But society's view of just kind of putting the emotion as non-existent doesn't allow you to keep moving. So we have to take that time. We have to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, a day, whatever time limit we set ourselves to actually feel the feeling, even if we don't want to, because we have to. It takes time to feel the feelings. It's a process of moving through, not moving on. And I say moving through in relation back to the societal pressure of just keep going, because again, we have to go through the emotion and through that feeling to then move forward. We can't just push it down. If we go to the next one, feelings versus emotions. What's the difference between feelings and emotions? Feelings are a conscious experience. Emotions kind of manifest from our conscious or subconscious. Emotions are much deeper and take a lot longer to process through. Our feelings are very surface level. And like Emily has said, our feelings are not always factual, but they are real and valid. And oftentimes, if we really get down to the emotion, we'll see that the feeling did not even really match what the actual true emotion was. If we can go into the next one, the 3 A's is, I think, key in any part of owning anything, but especially our feelings, the 3 A's of awareness, acceptance, and action. I want to go into awareness to the next slide. And awareness, I was trying to find a different word for it, and mindful is one that came up, because we have to be aware. I hate using that because it's awareness. So we have to be mindful. We have to see that there is actually an emotion there. We have to be willing to admit or own or feel, whatever that may be, that emotion, that feeling. And if we're not open-minded enough to see that it's there, we definitely cannot move forward with it. And then we just keep running on this pushing down societal, just keep moving force, which then doesn't actually, we don't benefit or learn or progress through. We just keep pushing. Some other alternate words I found for awareness were alert, information, realization. I like realization. If we can go to the next one for tips when developing awareness, Some things that are helpful are centering yourself. And centering yourself can look many different ways. It could be taking 3 to 4 deep breaths from the belly. Belly breaths are much different than how we would normally, unless we're very aware of belly breaths, of how we would breathe. I'd encourage you to look it up if you're unaware of it. It is a way to really get the deepest breath and where it needs to be in your body. So then you focus on those breaths, scanning your body for tightness, for tension, making note of the emotion or emotions. What is that feeling? Recording it, self-talk. What is the physical I'm feeling? Also, looking at what you're telling yourself. Is what I'm saying to myself as my own self-talk some of the cause of the pain and the emotions that I'm feeling? Because oftentimes it is. If I continuously tell myself that I suck because I haven't learned a new language in the last 2 months of being home, and I continuously tell myself that, I'm going to believe that. Now, it's not true, but I would believe it. And I'm telling myself that. And then just naming the emotion, putting a name to it makes it more real. And then when it's something you can identify, it makes it much easier to work through. And then we go to acceptance. And I have a quote here. Acceptance doesn't mean that life gets better. It just means that my way of living life on life's terms improves. And I think that falls right into what we were talking about with self-talk also. Life is, the only consistent in life is up and down. We're always going to have these things. It may not be a COVID-19, but it's always going to be something in our own personal lives and global. And we've got to start maybe looking at what we can control and change in our own minds and what we don't accept. If I have diabetes and I don't accept that I have it, I'm not going to get treatment for it. I'm not going to take care of it. I'm not going to own it, and ultimately I'm probably going to, in some aspects, potentially, die because of it. It's the same with our feelings. If I don't own them and I don't care for them, and then I can't heal them. I can't care for them daily. And then that kind of takes us into action. And with action, so now that I feel it, what do I do with it, right? There's a lot of different things there's probably a lot of good ideas that you guys all have. But, some things you can sit with it. Sit with it, feel it, own it, process through it. You can talk it out with a safe and trusted person, family member, doctor. Talk about it out loud. I talk about things out loud to myself all the time, and I definitely find why I am wrong all the time. And the action, all these things, but take a lot of practice and time, and are things that we have to work on daily to make them a continual thing in our daily lives. The more, though, that we stop ourselves and catch ourselves, and then practice the actions, the acceptance, the awareness, the easier it will become. You can't, they have to go in this order, because you can't move awareness to action without acceptance. They have to be in the order that they're in. And then, Emily, I think you got the next slide.
Yes. So I love that quote that you shared earlier about acceptance. And it's so important to realize that just because we're acknowledging and accepting our feelings does not mean that we have to get stuck in them. It actually means that we can begin moving forward instead of pushing them down and down and down until we end up crashing, right? And so we're best able to handle these big emotions if we're taking care of the basics, like sleep, getting enough sleep, 7 to 8 hours a night, but not too much. If you've ever ended up, when you're sick or end up sleeping really late, you sleep 12 hours. those are always my worst days, and I am in such a funk, feeling so foggy all day. So that's something to keep in mind, is that just because you have more time to sleep right now, try to stick to a regular routine with it. Diet, eating nutritious food, fueling your body, moving your body. So getting out, try to get out for a half an hour walk each day, or do some other sort of physical activity you enjoy. There are so many like dance classes, fitness classes online on YouTube right now for free, or a lot of gyms or organizations are offering, online Zoom classes. So those are a great way to get in moving your body, because we are missing out on those little things like walking around the office, or walking from the train to the office, or walking from our house to our driveway even. And then social connections, staying connected. It is tough right now for sure. And not being able to physically see people, talk to them, face to face versus through a screen. It's different and it's hard. And a lot of people, I think, are missing the physical touch part of relationships and of connection right now. Being able to just hug your friends. It's definitely hard, but don't give up. Stay connected as best as you can, because feeling like you still have those people to talk to, even if it does have to be through a screen, is so, so important. In terms of helping the big feelings pass, so those basics are more things to keep in mind, things to regularly do so that you can kind of maintain a more steady baseline. But of course, there are going to be flare-ups, right, where you're just feeling so anxious or so sad or so lonely. So how can we help those feelings pass in the moment? Deep breathing is really relaxing and can help bring you down from high emotions. Also things like meditation and yoga, a bunch of free stuff online. There are apps, there are guided meditations on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff that can help guide you in that. 4-7-8 breathing is a great one. So you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. That's a quick one to remember to be able to pull out at really any time. Taking a shower or a bath. Often water can feel really relaxing or cleansing, or maybe you feel more personally connected to the earth. If you can get outside and put your bare feet or bare hands on dirt or grass or a tree, that might help ground you. Gratitude. This can be the little things like I saw a gorgeous blue jay in my yard this morning, or the big things like I'm healthy, I have food to eat. Writing it out or journaling. I speak out loud. Christina, you mentioned this earlier. So one thing that I do, and it sounds absolutely ridiculous, is I pretend that I am on the phone with someone. So I speak things out loud, and then in my head, I create the other person's side of the conversation, which I find really helpful because I'm definitely someone that I need to talk out loud. I talk everything out loud. That is absolutely the best way for me to process thoughts and feelings. But then giving myself that extra layer of acting like I'm talking to someone else and having to pretend to be them in my mind, again, sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's really helpful with giving you enough distance from your thoughts, right? Like when we're inside of our thoughts and feelings, that's an emotional experience. And if you can kind of distance yourself and be like, okay, well, like if I'm a friend talking to someone who's feeling like this, what would I say? And you have to think those things. You have to come up with that other half of the conversation in your head. And I find that to be one of the most helpful things when I'm just so overwhelmed with thoughts and feelings. Taking a nap. Sometimes you just need to reset, and that's okay. If you wake up and your day has just been awful until 1 p.m., you know what? Take a 20-minute nap, call it quits for the day, go to sleep for 20 minutes, and then come back and start over. And that can often just the mind shift of like, okay, you know what? I'm taking a break and I'm fully restarting can get you out of that. It's just a bad day. The whole day is going to be bad kind of mindset. Other great things, coloring, puzzles, talking to friends, reading, exercising, really whatever works for you. And it's definitely a bit of trial and error. You might not like journaling. I'm personally not one that likes to write things out. And so that's how I found talking out loud, pretending I'm on the phone. You might not find deep breathing to be all that helpful, but if you have someone leading you through a guided meditation, that might do the trick for you. So like I mentioned earlier, there are very real concerns with COVID. So there's these kind of, just human primal fears that many people are dealing with. But there are some things that live mainly in our mind. So it's important to differentiate if your worries are real possibilities and what the chances are. So taking yourself step by step through those big anxieties and planning for them can be very, very helpful. So I mentioned earlier that anxiety about going to the grocery store. What if I get sick from that? Okay, so think, what if, fill in the blank? What if I get sick from going to the grocery store? Okay, then what? So what's the worry there? Is it not feeling well? Is it getting your family members sick? Is it, what if I get sick? Who's going to take care of the kids? So identify the real fear behind the anxiety and then make a plan. If you're worried about who's going to take care of the kids, think about, are there people that live around you? Do you have friends or family around you? Do your kids have friends nearby that, they could go and stay with for 2 weeks or so while you're quarantining? Is there a room in your house that is more distant from all the other rooms that you could quarantine in for 2 weeks? So planning for the specifics, make a concrete action plan for these things. Feeling more prepared will help settle the anxiety, right? So you still might be worried about getting sick, but you'll know that, okay, if I do, there's a solution, right? And then if it does happen, you won't be scrambling. So it's a win-win there. So up here we have, this is a feelings wheel, and there's a bunch of different versions online. I know it's kind of small, you probably can't read it on the screen, but if you just Google search feelings wheel, you'll find a bunch. So you want to evaluate, is the feeling really what I think it is? Often the true feeling is not, your first instinct. So we see in here in the bigger circle, or smaller circle, I guess, bigger pieces, there are things like happy, sad, angry, kind of the basics. But then you go out from that, and underneath, let's go with angry. So underneath angry, we have resentful, disrespected, furious, violated, jealous. So those are much more specific, right? You might think, oh, I'm angry. But in reality, you're feeling jealous that your friends still have secure jobs. Your friends aren't worried about trying to homeschool the kids because they don't have kids. So the English language has over 3,000 words for emotions. 3,000 words. That is so many. There is so much more than the basics that we tend to go to. A really great exercise is to take a sentence. So I felt blank when something happened, but what I was really feeling was blank, blank, and blank, right? So I felt angry when the store was out of, my favorite kind of milk. But what I was really feeling was overwhelmed because now I had to make a decision about what other kind of milk I was going to get, worried about, is the price going to be the same? What if they only have higher priced milk, and is that going to add up? There's so much more beyond our first instinct, right? Our first instinct feelings tend to be in that center circle right there, one of those few, and that's what we pin it on. But there is a lot more beneath it. And if we can identify those, that's a lot more productive than the go-to words that we usually use to capture emotions, right? So if all you can acknowledge is I'm feeling angry, okay, what are you going to do about that, right? It's harder to make an action plan, but if you can drive down, I'm worried about my budget now, then okay, let's make a plan for that. How can we, keep track of this? How can we figure out if there's a better option, right? And Christina, if you want to go into self-care for a bit.
Yeah, with all these feelings, and we really need to be very aware of our self-care, especially because for a lot of us, our first instinct is to kind of push down that feeling. And even if you don't, even if you take the feeling and you process through it, just like Emily was talking about, and, use the 3 A's and everything, it's still a draining task on the body. The feeling itself, like physically, can drain the body, especially depending if you're pushing it down or if you're dealing with it. So to make sure that we have those self-care things in our life is even way more, needed now, obviously, than ever, but is always so needed. Doing something fun, that's tricky right now, right? Because we're having to look at a whole new what is fun and what is fun that's acceptable right now, or that you can do in your home if you're a person who needs to be in your home right now. And so really trying to dig creatively and figuring that out. I know that with some of our groups that we've been doing online, we've definitely been looking at more fun aspects of things and doing little show and tell, groups and whatnot. Treating yourself, this is something that we all have to do. I would say daily. I mean, it doesn't have to be something big. It could be a cup of coffee. It could be a 20-minute nap, like Emily was saying. It could be an ice cream. A bath. Whatever it is that looks like for you. I think we should always do those things daily. Something physical, if you can, that definitely we know releases those good endorphins. That could be just stretching. We have done one, and I've seen many advertised chair yoga virtual groups right now. Those are great things right now where you can stay connected with people, even though it's virtual. It's still a connection, and it's still releasing, endorphins in your body, and it's good for you. And all those things are going to be how we get through all of this. It's going to be doing these things together and helping each other. Rest, Emily had brought it up. If you feel like you need to go lay down for 20 minutes, and restart your day, do it. I've done it. I can't, for whatever reason, fall asleep during the day anymore. I used to, but I can't anymore. But I will go lay down if I need to reset, the day and rest myself. And the tricky part is the not feeling the guilt in those things. So all this sounds so simple and so easy, right? Do these things and that things, but they're all connected. And the final thing on there, which isn't final in the aspect of support, but is one of the primary is seeking out support. We can't do this together. Emotions are hard, but some are good. We aren't meant to do life alone, and during this period with COVID is kind of pushing those, like what we have always known and known that we've needed. So now we're having to completely look at, what our self-care things are in this aspect and what does support look like in this aspect, and to allow ourselves to really experience it as much as we can and give ourselves a break and, just help each other and chair yoga and, Emily was talking about coloring and puzzles and things on the slide before, and or 2 slides, and I was kind of sitting there because I had been thinking about it in the last few days, like, wow, I'm using all of my coping skills and they're not working. My coping skills, my self-care are puzzles, coloring, and they're just not working. And so now I have to sit down and I have to reevaluate everything that has been in my, if you want, quote unquote, recovery plan, right? Because it's not working. I need something different. It's just, this is a different time, Sun has always worked for me. It's Florida here where I am, and it's summer, so it's always rain. So, really looking together and digging deep into ourselves and our emotions and finding out what does this look like now. And that's a very complicated way to address self-care, but
it is, but it's something that, we've been talking a lot about that within the MHA office lately, is that, what do you do when all of your coping skills aren't working anymore? And I think it's something that so many people are feeling. We all have these go-to things that we do to take care of ourselves when, we need to relax, we need to have fun, we need to just cool down for a bit. And so many people are like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything, but I still don't feel good. Like, it's not helping. And like I said, it's trial and error. It really is. It's exploring other things that, maybe haven't worked in the past. I know for me, meditation is something that I've always wanted to do, but could never get into. I would always try and I would just get bored and it just wouldn't work for me. And lately, the past month or so, I've done, all of my go-to things, like getting outside, like doing puzzles, like coloring. Like, I still am so anxious, like, what's going on? And I gave meditation another shot, and it's helping this time. It's still not easy, but it definitely is. It is going back to things that maybe you've written off from before, maybe you haven't tried ever before, and giving those things a shot. It is just kind of exploring what works best for you. And I also think you made a great point, Christina, about the guilt, right? Like, all this sounds so easy. Just do these things, right? But there is so much guilt involved in taking time for yourself, especially right now when you're like, oh my gosh, like, I need to be taking care of a million other things. And so that's really hard to deal with. But a big part of it is the realizing that you can be a better support for whoever else you want to support if you're taking care of yourself first. One of my favorite metaphors is you can't pour from an empty pitcher, right? So say you're your own pitcher, you have your own pitcher. You need to make sure that that's full before you start trying to help everyone else. Same thing with the putting on your own oxygen mask on an airplane before you put on someone else's for them. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be your best you for yourself or for whoever else you're trying to show up for. So it really is, if you can kind of switch it in your mind to, yes, it's self-care, but by taking care of myself, I'm helping to take care of others. For a lot of people who are very empathetic, who are big caretakers, big supporters, that can be a really helpful way to justify giving yourself that time in your own mind. All right. Any last words, Christina?
No. Just those were all really good points. Thank you. And I definitely appreciate you saying that it could take, trying to find things that previously didn't work, because with you in the meditation, myself, and stretching, that's always been a thing. I've always liked to pretty much yell at doctors when they would tell me to stretch. Not nice things. And now I'm finding that does work. So I think that there's really great value in you making a point of that, to look at things that didn't necessarily work before, maybe.
Yeah, it is. It's all figuring it out as we go along, for ourselves, for others, as our community. We're all in it together, like you were saying, and it's tough. It definitely is, but there's definitely some peace in knowing that, everyone else is going through similar things too. And it can be hard to open up the conversation. But just initiating, like, oh my gosh, I always go for runs when I'm feeling angry, but I just went for one and I'm still angry, can help. If you reach out and text a friend that, they're probably going to be really willing to engage with you in a conversation about that, right? Everyone is feeling kind of like this right now in some way or another. And if you are able to reach out and say that, there's a really good chance that whoever you're trying to talk to will 100% validate you, be right there with you. It really is. It's a weird time, but we are going through it as an entire world, which is devastating, absolutely. But there is a cool sense of community that I think has come up from it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so other than that, thanks so much for joining me today, Christina, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. Our emails are up on the screen right now if you want to get in touch with us. But thanks again, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.